Hi, I'm Rich Fink with the Western Loudon Art and Studio Tour, and today it is my pleasure to be interviewing Marilyn Harrington, a fiber artist. Marilyn, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine. Thank you for asking. So let's get started. Can you tell me a little bit about your artistic journey?
Well, my weaving started about 30 years ago. My husband was at a sabbatical in Santa Barbara, California. I went along, and when I got there, there was no job for me because I couldn't take my job that I'd had here, and so I was sitting around not doing much. And but I was a big knitter at the time, and I went down to the local yarn store and said, "Can I have a job, please?" And they turned out that they supported weavers, suggested I take weaving classes at Santa Barbara City College since I had nothing else to do. And so I started taking classes there. And it turned out to be wonderful. It was 2 days a week, 6 hours each day, and two different teachers. And they really, really knew what they were doing. And I was hooked. And then the owner of the yarn store offered to sell me a loom at cost and ship it back to Virginia when at the end of the year. And so here I am, 30 years later, and I'm weaving all the time, and I have 4 or 5 looms, I don't know, and I use them all at one time or another. Fact is, I'm assembling a new one right now upstairs.
Is that right?
Yeah. I just picked it up yesterday from an estate sale. So it's really
Wow,
cool.
that's great. That's great. So, you've been essentially a professional fiber artist for, you said, like 3 decades, right?
Well, I was a real amateur for probably the first 10 or 15 years. I sold things occasionally at the Waterford Weavers Guild at the Waterford Fair,
Uh,
but I wasn't really serious about it until the Workhouse Art Center opened up 11 years ago down in Lorton, Virginia, and I became part of Studio Fiber Arts down there, and then began to do this really seriously at that point. So 11 years I've been serious about it.
okay.
Uh,
Well, let's say within those 11 years, how has your technique changed? Has it changed?
it's gotten more complicated, and I've done a lot more of my dyeing right now. Prior to that, I was always using somebody else's yarn, and the longer I was at the workhouse, I started dyeing my own yarn to weave things with, and I also started dyeing silk scarves um, just for the fun of it. And so that's the big change, and in that I'm using yarn I create, you should say. I don't spin, but I create the colors in the yarn. Each one that I do is individual, and I make the warp for the project I have in mind. I make the warp, and then I paint it with a brush. I lay it out and I paint it. I separate it into sections and then I paint it. So it's more controlled than when you're dipping, because dipping you do the whole thing at once.
So you were saying that the way things have changed is that your designs have gotten more complicated
Mhm.
over the years. And how has it how has it how has it become more complicated? In what sense is what I'm asking?
Okay, well, when I started, I was weaving with a loom that had 4 shafts and 6 treadles. I'm now weaving with a loom that has 32 shafts. Those are the things that go up and down. It
Mhm.
has 32 shafts and it's computer controlled. So what I do is I create my design on the computer, and I figure out what color I want to use and how the flow of the colors in the item is going to go before I ever start making a warp. I figured that all out first, and So I have more control over what's going on than well, that's not really true because I had control before too, but it was control as I was weaving, and now it's control beforehand.
I see. Does that, I really didn't even know that looms were, I guess everything is now, right? Everything's controlled by computers, right?
Yeah.
Right. So does that also improve your amount of production in being able to come
No,
out? No, huh? Okay.
no. The only difference is that actually I think it kind of slows me down in a little because I spend hours and hours and hours on the design before I ever start working with the actual fibers. The difference between a computer controlled loom and a non-computer controlled loom is that the when you're weaving with a mechanical loom, you choose which shafts are going to go up and down as you're right there. But when you're using a computer controlled loom, you choose those things as you're making the program. And when you're weaving, you push down one treadle and it lifts all of the things at once. You specify that and it lifts all of the ones that you want to lift at one time. It also makes it possible for you to weave with the 32 shaft loom at home because otherwise you just don't have enough feet to raise that many shafts by yourself. You're
What?
lifting probably at least 16 shafts at a time with the 32 shaft loom, and so that's a lot to try and do by your
Yeah,
hand.
sounds like a lot to me, I'll tell you that.
Well, it allows me to make a lot more intricate design
No, it does, yes.
and control it, and I've become a much more technical weaver than I was at first. Before, I was just weaving somebody else's patterns and copying them out of magazines and stuff like that. And now I never do that. I always make my own, figure out what I want to do, and then just write the program and do it.
And that's a giant step for you, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It helps that I was a computer programmer in another life.
Ah, okay. All right. So what I'd like to do is bring out the uh, three images of your artwork, of your fiber art, and maybe you can tell me a little something about it and how you did it and what inspired you to pick these particular patterns. Is that okay? All right. And here we are.
Okay.
And I have to say, Marilyn, these are really, really beautiful and unique, different than each other. So why don't we start on the left and move our way across? So
Okay.
what can you tell me about the first piece of fiber art here?
Okay, that one is a scarf that's made out of tencel. The warp is gray. Actually, the warp is black and white. And then I wove it with a purple. And it's one of those computer design ones. Actually, the pattern on the left one and the pattern on the right one are very, very similar. They have the same threading on the loom. I could have done them on the same warp if I wanted to. The one on the right is also a tencel warp, but it has a silk weft and a different structure. But if you look at it, you can see it has the same alternating blobs, shall we say, of dark and light color. So they're similar, but they're not the same. And I do
So
a lot. I'll often put on a single warp that's long enough to make 5 scarves, and then create completely different designs that many times you can't even see as much similarity as you see on these two. These two are done at 2 different times. but they're very similar. The reddish one on the right-hand side here in my thing, and then the purple and gray one. Those are very similar. In the way they're set up on the loom, they're very similar. And the way they weave is very similar. But they feel completely different because they have different yarns in them and they have a different structure. So the red one is very light and very drapey. The one on the left, the purple one, is a heavier one, and it's not quite as drapey. When you're weaving, you have the threading and the treadling. The threading is the way you set the loom up, and then the treadling is the choice of which shafts go up and down at what time. And this one, the threading between the two is exactly the same, but the yarn colors are different, and the treadling is slightly different. It's one of my favorite patterns. I use it every now and then, and because I really like it. I like the way the colors work with it, and you can, like, these two don't look like they're alike, but they are, and they're it's fun to weave because those things going in and out are watching them build as you weave is fun.
The two pieces of artwork feels totally different because has a different yarn, right?
Right. And for fiber, touch and feel is a very important part of how the how you enjoy it.
Right.
It's really important as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, because it is a very tactile art.
Yes, it is.
So I would say that the one in the middle looks very, very soft.
It's turquoise and blue and yellow, and there's some pink in it. There's more pink on the back of it you can't see, but you can see it on the right side. And it's all hand dyed. When I was talking about the dyeing, this is the kind of thing I do when I'm dyeing it. This was dyed painted in 5 sections. I split the warp up into 5 sections and painted each one separately, but using the same colored dyes for each section. And then when I put it on the loom, I deliberately made it go on not straight, so that the colors would move around and each other. And then I wove that one with I don't actually remember anymore. I think it was I remember. It was an indigo dyed silk, a very fine indigo dyed silk, which I also dyed. Sometimes I don't dye the weft, but I dye the warp a lot. And this one I dyed weft as well, and that enhanced the blueness of the entire thing. This was one of my favorite shawls that I ever did, and it was one of those that the first time I hung it out, somebody bought it.
Well, it doesn't surprise me at all. It looks gorgeous. It really does.
And it felt really, really nice because silk is such a nice fiber. It's very, very, very supple and soft to the touch, and it can be it can be warm it's that kind of a shawl is perfect for April, May, June evenings, as well as in the fall, or those chilly offices that people used to have to go to.
Yeah. What's your favorite material? I mean, like yarn.
I like silk a lot, but as an alternative, the tencel works really well as also. The silk I get is all white and has to be dyed. The tencel I can get in colors, and it's a far less expensive, but yields similar result. It's a bright, shiny yarn that has a lot of the characteristics of silk without the cost. And so it makes it possible for me to price things differently when I use tencel than when I use silk.
Is it also soft?
Oh yes, it's very soft, very supple. And it has many, many of the characteristics of silk without having the cost of silk. It's actually, pencil is made from tree fibers that are chopped up, and it's all hardwood trees, and they create a slurry out of it and then extrude the yarn, so that it's also made similar to silk in that it's a single strand coming out. The silk is, the silkworm puts out these little tiny fibers.
Right.
They have to be spun.
Yeah, he has to work hard.
Yeah, that silkworm really does a hard work. And then there's a lot of people processing the silk afterwards.
Okay. All right. So I would like to whisk these three beautiful pieces away and get us back to you and I chatting. Are you ready for that?
Okay.
All right. And here we are. And here we are. So my question to you is about I am going to ask you to give me your connections to social media, but I'd also like you to talk to me a little bit more about the workhouse. Is that what's called? The workhouse. Now, I did look it up, and I wanted to know because it wasn't perfectly clear on their website. So is this more of a studio for you, or is it a studio with a gallery? And
It's a studio with a gallery. You've never been there, I take it.
no, I haven't. No.
It's a really interesting place. It started off as a prison. That was where it was a federal prison, and the American suffragists were incarcerated there. And all of the people who did bad things in the District of Columbia were incarcerated there. They closed it down in the early 90s, I believe, because it was just overcrowded and the conditions were really bad and the buildings were pretty decrepit. And it became a National Historic Site, and they decided to turn it into an art center rather than tear the place down. When you go into the buildings, the front of each building is a gallery that shows the work for that building. And then as you go through the doors at the back of the gallery, that's where there's a long hallway that has the studios off of that hallway.
You're in building 6. Now,
Yes.
Do you sell your art out of your studio, or?
Yes. There's some of my things are in the front gallery, and you can buy things in the front gallery, but you can also buy directly out of the studio. And
Okay.
in the studio, I had a loom that I was doing. It's closed right now because of the whole COVID thing. And I have work down there, but I'm not going to be in the open part of the studio until
Right.
we get a better solution to the situation.
Like a working vaccine. Yes.
Yes, like a working vaccine. Exactly. But my things will still be there in the gallery, but you won't be able to talk to me because I'm not open to that kind of thing.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Well, it's very interesting. Thank you for that history.
Yeah, the workhouse is it's a lot of fun, and each building has its own character. Some buildings are and there's some buildings are ceramics and glass, and lots of painters and drawers and things like that.
Okay. Well, Marilyn, it's been great talking to you. I really happy that we could get together, and you schooling me on fiber art and looms and everything else. It's been great.
Okay, cool.
So I have 3 things I would like you to do for me. One is to stay safe. The next one is to stay healthy, and the third is to have a fabulous day today.
I'm intent on that. Yes, you got to finish putting that loom together.
Yeah.
Half done right now.
Oh, that's great. Is that why you asked me How long is this going to take? Because you were itching to get back to that loom. Is that right?
Well, yeah, kind of. Tomorrow is my birthday, and so I want to spend the day working on a new loom as my present to myself. But I have to get the loom together first.
Well, there you go. Well, you have a fabulous birthday.
Thank you. I will.
All right. You take care.
Okay.